When discussing the Second World War, the armies of the United States, the Soviet Union, Britain, and Germany often dominate the story. Yet smaller nations made contributions far greater than their size might suggest. One of the most striking examples is New Zealand. With a population of just 1.6 million in 1939, the country managed to field an army that fought in Greece, Crete, North Africa, and Italy, carving out a reputation for toughness, reliability, and skill. Despite their small numbers, New Zealand soldiers left a mark on the war far beyond their size. So how capable was the New Zealand Army in World War II? When Britain declared war on Germany in September 1939, New Zealand immediately followed. The 2nd New Zealand Expeditionary Force was raised, under the command of Lieutenant General Bernard Freyberg, a First World War hero and holder of the Victoria Cross. Freyberg, a larger-than-life figure with a reputation for personal bravery and compassion for his men, would lead New Zealand's soldiers throughout the conflict. By war's end, around 140,000 New Zealanders served overseas, and about 11,900 were killed, one of the highest casualty rates per capita of any Allied nation. In proportion to its population, New Zealand's contribution was larger even than that of Canada or Australia. The backbone of this effort was the 2nd New Zealand Division, consisting of 3 infantry brigades, the 4th, 5th, and 6th, and supporting artillery, engineers, and service units. This formation became one of the most respected divisions in the Allied order of battle. The division's baptism of fire came in Greece in 1941. Alongside British and Australian units, they fought delaying actions against overwhelming German forces. At the Aliakman Line and later at Mount Olympus, the New Zealand brigades earned respect for their discipline under fire, slowing the German advance long enough to allow many Allied troops to withdraw. But it was Crete where New Zealand troops became central to the story. When German paratroopers launched their massive airborne invasion in May 1941, New Zealand units bore the brunt. At Malmö Airfield, the 22nd Battalion under Lieutenant Colonel Leslie Andrew fought ferociously against elite Fallschirmjäger. Despite being forced back, the New Zealanders inflicted devastating losses on the Germans. Nearly 4,000 paratroopers were killed or wounded by Allied troops during the battle, and Hitler never again attempted a large-scale airborne assault. Though Crete was lost, German survivors later admitted they had been shocked by the ferocity of the New Zealand soldiers. The North African campaign was where the New Zealand Army forged its legend. At Minkarkaim in June 1942, the 2nd New Zealand Division was surrounded by Rommel's Afrika Korps. Rather than surrender, they broke out at night with bayonets and close-quarters fighting, cutting their way through the German lines. Rommel later admitted his admiration for the skill and aggression of the New Zealanders. At the First Battle of El Alamein in July 1942, New Zealand troops held vital positions under heavy attack, preventing Rommel from breaking through to Cairo. Later, during Montgomery's offensive in October to November, Freyberg's division played a pivotal role in punching through the Axis defences. Their assault at the Mitiria Ridge was costly, but helped crack open Rommel's front, leading to one of the greatest Allied strategic victories of the war. Among the heroes of this period was Captain Charles Upham of the 20th Battalion, who became one of only 3 men ever to receive the Victoria Cross and Bar, a double VC. In Crete, he had led daring counterattacks with grenades while severely wounded and in poor health. At Ruwaisat Ridge in North Africa, despite again being wounded multiple times, he destroyed a German tank with grenades and continued leading his men until he collapsed. His story became legendary, embodying the New Zealand soldier's toughness. Another standout was Sergeant Keith Elliott, who received the Victoria Cross at Ruwaisat Ridge for leading a bayonet charge that captured enemy positions despite being seriously wounded. After victory in North Africa, the New Zealand Division was sent to Italy in late 1943. At the Sangro River, they crossed in freezing conditions to establish a vital bridgehead. But the most famous episode came at Monte Cassino in early 1944. Freyberg commanded the multinational force tasked with seizing the ruined monastery town. The New Zealanders fought desperately in Cassino town itself, engaging in some of the toughest urban combat of the war. Though their attacks did not succeed in capturing Cassino at the time, the fighting demonstrated their tenacity in near impossible conditions. Later, during the drive north, New Zealand troops helped break the Gothic Line, Germany's last major defensive line in Italy, proving once again their worth as shock troops in offensive operations. Several key factors made the New Zealand Army highly capable. Freyberg's leadership was central. He cared deeply for his men, often putting himself at risk, and ensured the division retained its cohesion. His officers encouraged initiative, a trait well suited to the dynamic campaigns of the Mediterranean. Crucially, many New Zealand soldiers came from rural farming backgrounds. They were hardy, physically tough, and resourceful. British commanders often remarked on their ability to improvise under pressure. The division was a close-knit national force. Unlike some other Commonwealth formations, it retained its identity and services, including its own medical corps and supply chain. This independence boosted morale and efficiency. However, New Zealand's small population limited its capabilities. The division could not sustain prolonged attrition like larger armies. After heavy casualties, it often had to be withdrawn for rebuilding. The New Zealand Army also relied heavily on British equipment and logistics. Shortages of tanks, artillery, and motor transport sometimes limited its operational freedom. Finally, Freyberg sometimes clashed with British High Command. His handling of Crete and Cassino remains debated, though it's clear he was often placed in extremely difficult situations. British commanders held the New Zealanders in high regard. Field Marshal Montgomery described them as one of the best fighting divisions under his command. German opponents too respected them. General Hans von Luck, a panzer commander in North Africa, recalled that New Zealand troops were particularly aggressive and skilled in night fighting. Rommel himself noted their toughness and professionalism. Winston Churchill praised the division's performance at El Alamein, calling the New Zealanders a magnificent body of men. The cost of their contribution was immense. Over 11,900 New Zealanders were killed, and many more wounded. In terms of percentage of population, New Zealand bore one of the heaviest burdens of any Allied nation. But their sacrifice was matched by their valour. Alongside Upham and Elliot, other Victoria Cross winners included Jack Hinton, who stormed German machine gun nests in Greece, and Clive Hume, who performed a series of acts of extraordinary gallantry during the fighting in Crete. The 28th, Maori Battalion in particular, earned a fierce reputation, with German prisoners reportedly saying they feared them most in hand-to-hand fighting. So, how capable was the New Zealand Army in World War II? For a country of just over 1.5 million people, New Zealand's contribution was extraordinary. The 2nd New Zealand Division fought in nearly every major theatre of the Mediterranean War, from the mountains of Greece and Crete to the deserts of North Africa and the hills of Italy. They were small in number but consistently demonstrated toughness, initiative, and professionalism. Decorated soldiers like Charles Upham became legends, and whole units like the 28th earned a fearsome reputation. Their commanders, especially Bernhard Freyberg, maintained their independence and national spirit, ensuring the division punched far above its weight. While not decisive in the global sense, because they lacked the size of the major land combatants, the New Zealand Army was among the most respected Allied forces of the war, admired by friend and foe alike. Their story is one of sacrifice, courage, and national pride, proving that even the smallest nations could play a mighty role in the greatest conflict in human history. Thanks for watching. So, what do you think? How capable were the New Zealand Army in World War II? Let me know in the comments below. And if you have enjoyed this video, then please like, share and subscribe for more analysis of the Second World War.